Hello and welcome on into Classic Pro Wrestling with the WFIA podcast. I am Chris DeCarlo, the Vice President of the WFIA. Underneath me, bottom right corner, is the man with class, our friend Mike the Class DiGregorio from Rhode Island. How are you?
I'm good, sir. How are you guys doing?
Good. Welcome. Always, right? The corner to my left is not only the player, he is WFIA board member. He is the master, the one and only Mr. Benny Scala.
Glad to be here as always.
And underneath Benny is our guest this week. He is an author, improv, movie star, historian, the one and only Mr. Mike Messier.
Hey Chris, hey Mike, hey Benny, how's it going, everybody? And special hi to our audience, of course.
Thank you. And what do you got cooking to promote for our friends out there, Mike?
Well, of course, today, as I'm sure we'll mention, and you'll get more into it next week, Hulk Hogan passed away. If you go to MikeMessier.com shop, I've had this design that I drew or painted actually of Hulkster on MikeMessier.com shop on T-shirts and everything. My novel Fight or Play Basketball is still available on Amazon. This is the downside of the video stuff, but Fight or Play Basketball, and I'll be in a movie called The Roaring Game, which has Mickey Rourke in it, among others, and that will be coming to streaming at some point in the winter. So that's about it.
Hey.
Wow, very good.
Oh, that's awesome.
Very awesome. Yes, as first a little WFIA business, of course. If you go to the WFIA.org, you can, we have our t-shirt like the one behind me for sale and coffee mugs with our logo. Also, of course, we want everyone out there to please be a member of the WFIA. It is $50 for the calendar year. You will get a monthly magazine via email, a classic picture of a pro wrestler, manager, referee, whatever we have. Also now for members joining, a 10% discount if you buy anything off the website in our store. And we're hoping to have a convention in 2027 for the 60th anniversary of the WFIA. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, guys, what a heck of almost week or so of just bad news in the industry and celebrities. Of course, rock legend Ozzy Osbourne. What a career he had. Malcolm Jamar Warner, one of the Cosby kids on the Cosby Show, and did some other things. And of course, last but of course not least, as Mike Messier mentioned, the sad and devastating news throughout the pro wrestling world today. The loss of Hulk Hogan, Mr. Terry Gene Bollea at 71. We're all shocked and saddened about this, of course. And as Mike Messier mentioned, we will have a special tribute show next week, July 31st, 7 p.m. Eastern, like we are live right now on the Playa Entertainment Network for the Hulkster. But guys, if you will, if you got it, we're going to toast a couple of things. First, Benny, to your show last night with Nikita and the unpredictable Johnny Rods.
Oh, yeah. What a great guy Johnny Rods is.
Yeah, very good show. I caught it last night.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. And also to our rest in peace, like we just mentioned, Ozzy, Malcolm Jamar Warner, and of course, the Hulkster. Cheers.
Cheers.
So, guys, this week we're going to go back in time. A great idea from our friend there, Mr. Mike Messier, to almost kind of highlight each year in pro wrestling history. And we're going to start with 1983. Of course, a lot of big things going on in 1983 across all the territories. And if you will, first, Benny, put up my disclaimer, please.
Oh, yeah.
Here we have a disclaimer about the Copyright Law 107. These videos are my personal library. I don't sell them. I don't rent them to nobody. but they are also for our criticism and historical value in classic pro wrestling. And if you will, Benny, please roll classic clip number 183-1.
Oh, he throws Assassin in. Big elbow. I can't follow all this action. We got everybody in there. Everything's going crazy. Oh, we have pandemonium breaking loose. Everybody on their feet. Look at this. Freeway. Oh, mama.
The time limit. The big man on my left out of Tokyo. He weighs 255, the world-famed Professor Ito. Well, his opponent weighing in at 243, and by the way, this is an Indian strap match. He is a leader in the Beat the Champ elimination tournament bouts. He now has 3.5 points towards the title. 243 the weight, Chief Running Hill.
Welcome to Great
Belts. Gino was scratching his left wrist there. I thought something was itching, but wait a minute! Tully Blanchard, how? That's a surprise even to me.
Tully Blanchard has turned on Gino Hernandez.
Turned on Gino Hernandez right there.
After they won the belts.
Oh my God!
He couldn't have been smart enough to turn on him.
Tarrant County Convention Center. It's Hayes and Carey. And hold on to your hats. Quick referee stance into a headlock. Down goes Carey. Leg scissors on Hayes, and he kicks out. A treat. He bears an amazing physical resemblance to certain other people we know. I believe in the case of Mr. Gulf Coast. And Flair.
Wow.
Some great classic footage there across all territories as we are going to dive into 1983 in pro wrestling. But first, forgot to mention off the top a special hello and welcome on in to the show to everybody in the live chat that our producer, Mr. Benny Scala, is monitoring and letting us know about any comments or stuff through there. So thank you and welcome aboard. So, Mike Messier, what do you think there? We got covered from, we're going from west to east here during 1983. We started there with Portland and Buddy Rose's face turn. We had wrestling from the Olympic there. Mr. Chief Frank Hill, also better known as Chief Jules Strongbow. He will be a future guest on this show. We can't wait to have him join us. And also Southwest, Tully turning on Gino. World Class, of course, the Von Erichs Freebirds started that big feud in 83. We saw Southeastern Championship Wrestling under that mask of Mr. Gulf Coast was actually Austin Idol. He got a match with Flair on TV under the mask. But and then lastly, that was Championship Wrestling from Florida. As you heard, the Dean, the great Gordon Soley's voice, Barry Windham, Ron Bass, and their feud. And that was a great match. If you remember, it was the title versus the saddle. So why don't you start off us there, Mike Messier?
Well, what comes to my mind, Chris, is just the high level of talent spread out throughout the country in different territories. And I think 1983 is the final year of Bob Backlund's title reign as WWF champion. I believe he won it in February of 78 and would hold it, I believe, to December 26th of this year, 1983. And Harley Race got his 7th, and depending on who you ask, his final NWA World title reign. I believe that was in June, and he held it until Starrcade. It was the first Starrcade was on Thanksgiving night of 83 when Ric Flair beat Harley Race in a cage, and that Starrcade came before the first WrestleMania a year and a half later in 85. Going to these clips, and great job making those clips, is to me, it's just, you see these different territories, Portland, World Class, AWA and WWF will come later. But just as a wrestling fan, depending on where you lived in the country, you had access to a different promotion, both through television and through your home arena. And I'm sure that there are other smaller federations that maybe we don't even have videotapes of anymore, but it's just interesting how cable television that really didn't blow up until maybe a year and a half, 2 or 3 years later, depending where you lived in the United States. Cable television and Vince McMahon and his, whatever you want to call it, his enthusiasm, his business savvy, his greed, however you look at Vince McMahon Jr. and what he did in the mid 80s. This was the last full year before all of that. This was the last full year before Hulk Hogan had a world title around his waist with the WWF. So this, and I've heard Jim Cornette say it, like 1983 was kind of like the grand exit for these territories, the old territories. And some of them would stick around, like World Class stuck around for another 6 or 7 years. But some of them, like Mid-South or UWF Wrestling, they didn't stick around. They were gone by 88. And so it's really an amazing year because it's like the peak of the old territory system happened in 83, and then everything started going downhill for that particular, say, mid 70s to early 80s, or even early 70s till mid 80s. This 1983 is the peak of Georgia Championship Wrestling, World Class Championship Wrestling, probably the AWA, all these different territories. This is the year when it all came together. And a year later, mostly because of Vince and his greed or business savvy, it would all start to fall apart. So 83 is a very big year.
Benny, your comments on all this classic footage in the territories.
Yeah, I'm going to build upon what Mike so very eloquently said. Number one, just looking at that, just for a very, stark reminder of how much talent was out there. And I know, I guess back by the late 70s, I could get, obviously growing up in Long Island, New York, I could get WWF on regular TV, but then I could get on UHF, I could get NWA Hollywood, which we saw Jules Strongbow or Frank Hill on that. I could get CWF with the Dean, Gordon Soley. I heard him say Crimson Mask. I mean, one of the phrases that he coined. But I really, it's that debate. Vince McMahon made wrestling better, but did he really? Because when you take the sum total of say 30 territories, Southwest, you got Florida, you got Georgia, AWA, and Portland. When you add all, like, say, their weekly TV shows together, did WWF really outdraw them? When you take all the shows they did on their loop on a weekly basis, like Florida had a 5 or 6 town loop every week. Did WWF really make that better? I mean, did they draw more fans? I'm going to argue that the sum total of the TV ratings and the attendance of the territories actually far surpassed that of Vince McMahon. The only difference, like Mike said he used the word greed. Now all the money is going into Vince's pocket, and that's really the biggest difference.
You're right. And then Black Saturday was July 84. Of course, when Vince showed up on Georgia World Championship Wrestling and shocked everybody there. But Mike the Class, what are some thoughts?
No, it's just to go by what Benny was saying about McMahon, and it's kind of true. I mean, because when you really think about it, McMahon made it more international, and now you're starting to see the pay-per-views all over. And now we got one coming up in Paris, the Saudi Arabia one. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's better quality. And I agree with Mike Messier on all that. I mean, honestly, the amount of territories they had and the amount of wrestling that you had in quality, even though it wasn't on TV, but could you imagine the territories existing now with the amount of streaming and just cable television? If it had existed in that kind of medium back then, maybe we would have saw a different outcome. I mean, who knows? I mean, just losing the AWA put on some really great matches, and before the WWF at the time, I mean, that's where a lot of the stars came from when you really think about it. And I think it's kind of like lost in history sometimes, and then you think of the NWA with Billy Corgan and what he's trying to do now. I mean, to me, it's a shame. I really honestly think that wrestling's not better because of it. And I also think the character development back then was better. I mean, maybe it's just me, but I mean, you look at the characters that are on TV now. It seems like every character is a brooding character. I mean, we had the Undertaker. Now you got Damian Priest, who's like an Undertaker light, and it's like it doesn't necessarily mean that the quality's better. Again, I mean, they are able to get wrestlers that are international, like the Sheamuses and the Becky Lynch's, and that's great. But it kind of killed some of the stuff in the United States and especially in Canada when you really think about it. You think about Maple Leaf Wrestling, that was a pretty hot territory, at one time.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily make that it's better quality, but I agree with Mike that was kind of the beginning of the end for the territory, as the territories as we know it. You know what I mean? You look at World Class Championship Wrestling. I mean, they put out a product that was great. They had some legends in there. You know what I mean? You look at Nashville.
Yeah, we're gonna take a look at some more in our next set of clips. But Mike Messier, as you mentioned, just the Billy Corgan, we got to give him some props. Hopefully, we can get a hold of him through the WFIA, but. I think he's trying to bring back. He's trying, I see, to bring back some territories under the NWA banner and have some YouTube shows of it. What are your thoughts on that? And you attended a live event, so how's their production and all that being there live?
Well, I drove here from Jacksonville to Tampa, Florida, and they had a television taping. This is National Wrestling Alliance 2025. It was this past month, actually, June of 2025 is when it happened. And I went to it. It was in a TV studio. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I would say that it was a legitimate 250, 300 people in this TV studio. And the action was very good. I would say, oddly enough, the last time I really watched Billy Corgan's NWA was when I went to a pay-per-view of Tyrus was in the main event against Matt Cardona, and that was like 2 years ago. So I don't really watch their television as much, but I like going to the live show. I think I kind of have a feeling that their live shows are better than their television presence right now. I don't know what I would do to improve it. It seems that the pace of their television shows are a little slow. And but the talent is there. Their women's division, this lady Tiffany Thieves was their women's television champion. They have a young woman named, I believe her name is Kenzie Page. She's their women's world champion. She's only 21 years old, and they're billing her as the youngest women's NWA world champion ever. Billy Corgan does commentary for all the matches. I mean, I did kind of get the vibe that this is a vanity piece. This is a passion piece, or a passion project for Billy, similar to AEW wrestling is for Tony Khan. There's some good talent there. I do feel like it needs a little bit of a catalyst, a little bit of a hot angle, or just something to make them stick out and stand out. They do the retro thing with some of the title belts. I believe they have a United States belt. I think we were talking about this on a prior show that kind of has the Continental US on it. I think they have a title belt that's either their national title or something like that. So I'm pulling for the NWA, and they, like you said, they are doing the affiliate program where they have these. A friend of mine does something called Veterans Pro Wrestling, and I think he's trying to get in with the NWA. They have smaller groups in different states that they're trying to build up, which is kind of cool. It's interesting. So I think for people like us that love the old school wrestling, if you want to help out the NWA and support them, watch them on X. I think they're doing a show on X now. Watch them and give them some support.
And they're going to Roku are going to start carrying their shows. I started watching it was on YouTube, 605, and I thought they put on a good show back in that studio. Even when Jim Cornette was on there with Dave Marquez. I mean, that was awesome, legit, just like watching an old NWA 85, studios in Atlanta, Georgia. I mean, that was great. But they're trying Roku now, so hopefully bigger and better things. And I agree with everything you had to say there. They need something or some more talent to get something going to stand out, to draw more people other than us in. Of course, like we're trying to rebuild our group here, the WFIA. Same difference. We need to rebuild it to what it was, and I believe in Billy Corgan. Hopefully, he'll do it. Benny, why don't you roll our second set of clips, please? 1983, 2. Unfortunately, there was no sound to this, but this was a classic Mid-Atlantic under the NWA banner, where Greg the Hammer Valentine got into a feud with
Ladies and gentlemen, Ric Flair has just attacked Harley Race in the ring. Flair is beating on Race.
Ooh, big main event action where we got Austin, the Universal Heartthrob Idol, and Jerry the King Lawler teaming together. Go against one of the most impressive.
There we go. I mean, almost the rest of the territories moving east from Georgia. World Championship Wrestling got renamed, but still the Georgia territory, as we heard the Dean again, Gordon Soley. Mid-Atlantic under the NWA banner. St. Louis, Wrestling at the Chase. St. Louis Wrestling, they had the two different shows back in 83 until they went back to Central States Wrestling, 83 to 88. And then Mid-South, we saw Andre the Giant, where at the time we know Andre the Giant was throughout all the territories, even Calgary over the years back then, before Vince Jr. put a stop to it. And then Memphis, what a tag team match that was. You guys are going to have to check it out. Jerry the King Lawler and Austin Idol against Jesse the Body Ventura and Stan the Lariat Hansen. Surprised to see Ventura and Hansen down in Memphis at that time. And then, of course, our AWA clip from 83. It was Bockwinkel Hogan for the most part, and that was Super Sunday there in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And then, of course, our two WWF clips. Slaughter came back, as I said, and started right in with Bob Backlund, like he did back in 1980, 81. And, of course, Snuka Morocco. People still talk about that feud today, and Snuka diving off the top rope and off the cage in Madison Square Garden, October of 83. So what do you say, Mike Messier?
Well, this reminds me, guys, I've been saving this actually for over 6 years. When I was a child, there was a pro wrestling magazine that had the greatest cover that I thought ever for a wrestling magazine. And of course, I let somebody at school borrow it and got it back all damaged and banged up. So through the miracle of eBay, 6 years ago, I ordered this, and I did take the outside envelope, but I haven't taken it out of this envelope. So this, I believe, is the greatest wrestling magazine of all time. It covers the action on Thanksgiving night of 83, but it's actually the March 84 Sports Review Wrestling Magazine. Ric Flair with the NWA World title, Jay Youngblood and Ricky Steamboat with the tag team titles of the NWA, and Valentine and Piper. And then, as I remember this, you guys saw it before I did, so fondly, there is the Atlanta Tag Team Tournament in the Omni, which they used to do this Thanksgiving tournament tag teams. And I believe the finals came down to Butch Reed and Pez Whatley, I want to say against, was it Randy Savage and Magnum TA? Like a real hodgepodge. And that brings me to another point, Chris and everybody, which is in the territory days, it wasn't unusual for these territories to loan out a top wrestler. For instance, Butch Reed wasn't wrestling in Georgia Championship Wrestling on Thanksgiving 83. He was in Mid-South as a top heel, but they loaned him out to Georgia, where he teamed up, I think, as a babyface with Pez Whatley to win this tournament. You would see Andre the Giant go from the Northeast. He would travel to World Class Championship Wrestling a tremendous amount of times. There's a show where Andre the Giant is in this kind of bizarre 7-man battle royal, and I think Bundy's in it and Jose Lothario. You would see Andre the Giant come in and team up with Iceman Parsons or Kerry Von Erich for a match. You would see Kerry Von Erich who was a world-class guy. He would go to Houston. There was something called the Missouri title, which was like a big deal because they were always saying that whoever has the Missouri state title is the next to win the world title. And Harley Race, I think, in between world title reigns would be a Missouri champion. Ric Flair would do the same thing. And I think David Von Erich was getting groomed for the world title because they gave him the Missouri title for a while. I think there was a time when Ken Patera had the Intercontinental title in the WWF and the Missouri title in the NWA at the exact same time, which you pretty unheard of. Yep. But these days they're kind of doing that again with WWE and TNA. So all this stuff, it just shows you, like I said, the talent was so much talent and so spread across the country. Even in places like, Puerto Rico with Carlos Colon and Abdullah the Butcher and so forth. But I mean, to me, the fact that you could be, say you were in Florida and you're watching Dusty Rhodes versus Kevin Sullivan every week, but then suddenly you get Junkyard Dog coming in for a match or two, or, guys like Kabuki or Kamala, exotic Adrian Street. It was just such a different thing where the wrestlers were not under long-term contracts. As far as I know, they were still kind of free agents. It didn't mean that they still had those handshake agreements that kept the guy in the territory. But as far as doing a one-off or hey, we're going to have Dusty Rhodes lose a loser leave town match in Florida for 30 days, but he can go to Mid-South and somewhere else for a couple of weeks. I mean, that's the type of thing that was so exciting. Also, I wanted to bring out the wrestling magazine because that's a forgotten art. You know what I mean? And like the after mags were my favorite. There was other wrestling magazines like Wrestling Review and so forth. But I thought as a young fan, 83 was the first year, a full year for me as a wrestling fan. I got to see some live matches like Bob Backlund versus Don Morocco at the Capitol Center. Credit to my father. He took me and another young friend through the blizzard of 82 snowstorm in February of 83 to go see this crazy wrestling show. This was a historic snowstorm, and we went through it in my dad's diesel Rabbit to go see this. Wow. Bob Backlund and Don Morocco beat the crap out of each other. And the main event was actually Playboy Buddy Rose and Ray the Crippler Stevens against SD Jones and Don Morocco, SD Jones and Rocky Johnson. So that was pretty exciting. Wow. And the other thing that comes to mind with 83 is the one word, blood. I mean, a lot of these territories, guys, as you remember, blood, blood, blood. Even Morocco and Snook in the WWF, the Freebirds, Von Erichs, people were juicing. Southwest Championship Wrestling, Bob Sweetan was not a good guy, as we know now, but he and Tully Blanchard beating the crap out of each other in a cage match and bleeding profusely. Abdullah the Butcher, wherever he went, look out, because you're going to get your head carved open. It did seem that the 1983, there's a famous picture. How can you forget? If you've ever seen this photograph, I think on the cover of Inside Wrestling, Don Kernoodle with his whole face is plastered in legitimate red blood after the Final Conflict. I mean, that's another show we haven't mentioned yet, but the Final Conflict, Steamboat and Youngblood in Greensboro, I believe in March of 83. Steamboat and Youngblood, a cage match against Kernoodle and Slaughter. No one in Greensboro was expecting this thing to sell out. I mean, they knew they'd get a good crowd, but apparently the legend is that 4 or 5 hours of highway traffic, people trying to get to Greensboro Coliseum to see this cage match, and it backed up the highway. And I think even some of the wrestlers had a hard time getting to the venue. And apparently that was a catalyst for Starrcade in November of that year because, whether it was Dory Funk Jr. or Jim Crockett Sr. or Jim Crockett Jr., I should say, and Dusty Rhodes, however the mind thinkers were, they said, oh my God, if we can get a huge blowout, sellout crowd for a cage match, tag team title match, what could we do if we position Ric Flair and Harley Race in a big rematch in a cage? So, and that, once again, Starrcade led to WrestleMania in my book. So, I mean, if you're talking about 83, this is a huge year. I believe this is when superstar Billy Graham came back, unless that was late 82, and he was challenging Backlund. Backlund's last full year as champion, Mass Superstar, one of Chris's favorites, was going after Backlund. They went with the Iron Sheik. People today, they'll never understand when Hulk Hogan won the title in January of '84, it was such a big deal because he beat the Iron Sheik, who won the title in '83. If they couldn't go directly from Backlund to Hogan, but the Iron Sheik as a heel, with the whole history, the recent history of the Iran hostage crisis and all that stuff, that dude was over as far as a heel goes. I mean, he was not over in a cheer the heel way. He was over in a legit heel way. I'm talking about Iron Sheik, Kozlov. But I mean, it was just an incredible packed year for wrestling. And the Miracle guys, for everybody watching us tonight, YouTube is really a good thing for pro wrestling fans, because even last night, I found a playlist on YouTube that somebody put together 1983 wrestling matches, and the thumbnail is of Black Bart at the Final Conflict. He was known as Rick Harris at the time, but they had like all the NWA territories and like an hour here, an hour there of the different territories. So if people want to relive or for the first time live these moments, all you got to do is go to YouTube, put 1983 wrestling in the search engine, and it's just a paradise for a wrestling fan.
Yes, indeed. I mean, like you said, the Final Conflict, I do have that rare card. It was not on closed circuit, but it was only for the folks in the North Carolina area. And what they don't have on that card, I'm hoping the WWE listens and puts it on the WWE Vault or under WCW on YouTube, is that 1 hour Flair versus Valentine match before the cage match that you were talking about. And that was an awesome cage match, just full of blood indeed. But Benny, some more thoughts on those rare clips we just saw?
Yeah, I mean, again, I want to talk about, the territories in general. You had 30 territories, and the professional wrestling gainfully employed way many more wrestlers in 1983 with all the territories than they do now. I mean, you talk about 30 territories, even if they had like 40 in each territory, that's 1,200. You don't have that on the combined rosters of AEW and WWE. So, and the other thing is, Mike was talking about Tampa. I mean, in 1983 in Tampa, you go to what I think it was called the Homer Hester League on Tuesday night. I mean, every Tuesday night they had a great show. You could see Kevin Sullivan. You could see Bill. I think Billy Graham was there briefly in '83. You could see a high quality wrestling card once a week. I mean, now I live 20 miles from Tampa. They're here maybe once a year. So again, I think the average Joe wrestling fan was way better off in 1983 than they are now. But that Super Sunday clip that you showed was, I think, April 24th, 1983. The usual bullshit finish. And, Hulk is in WWF by what? I think December 27th, he made his debut in St. Louis. And then he wins the title a month later. But, so, and then what? 3 years later, he's wrestling Andre the Giant, March 29th, 1987, at the Pontiac Silverdome in front of what? 93,000 people. March 29th, 1987. It was Ray Stevens and Nick Bockwinkel versus, I forgot who the hell it was, at the Boylan Catholic High School, the exact same day. What was maybe 1,000, 2,000 people. So, I mean, there's that age-old debate. What should Vern Gagne have put the title on Hogan? I say yes, because would he have been wooed away by Vince eventually? Probably. But I mean, maybe they could have hung on a little bit longer if Hulk had been the champion. And who knows what would have happened? We know what happened with him not being the champion.
I totally agree with you, Benny. We almost got into it earlier, but yes, I mean, I don't know why Vern didn't do it. I mean, the popularity we're gaining there. Hogan had the T-shirt he was ripping off there. So before that, we saw the incredible Hulk Hogan, and we'll get into more of that next week with some classic footage from '79 on of the Hulkster in Georgia and Southeastern. And, actually another clip, Mike Messier, we didn't include. We did show Flair and Race in St. Louis under the NWA banner. But a lot of people don't know is that, first off, in 1981, Hulk Hogan wrestled Mike Masters in LA there at the Olympic Auditorium. The commentary was in Spanish, but a great quality and decent match. And as Hogan was a heel then. But then we move forward to 83 as Hogan a fan favorite on Wrestling at the Chase, St. Louis, wrestling Jerry Blackwell. And man, that was awesome. And maybe a lot of people don't know that. But we'll get into that again next week as we highlight the great career of the immortal Hulk Hogan. But just all over the country. Again, Andre the Giant there in Mid-South, but like you talked about, Mike Messier, yes, teaming with Iceman King Parsons at the Sportatorium against the Super Destroyers. Vince Sr. would trade with all these territories. It was so great. And then Vince Jr. came, basically put a stop to all that. Not even letting the Giant out anymore to go, to maybe help save these territories. We can go on and on about a lot of it, right?
Yeah, and these that type of thing, Vince's greed, or as his defenders would put it, business savvy. One thing that just to clarify, Hogan claims, at least in his interviews and books, that Vern Gagne was pressuring Hogan to not go to Japan because Hogan was going over there and getting a lot of money. And
Right.
Vern didn't want Hogan doing that as much or at all. And also Vern had a daughter that Hogan was dating, but Vern was kind of putting the pressure on Hogan to marry his daughter. And Hogan, no disrespect to the young woman, to Vern's daughter, but Hogan didn't exactly want to do that, or more to the point, he didn't want to be pressured to do it because he knew that if he became Vern's son-in-law, that he would have all his eggs tied up with Vern, as far as my father-in-law is my boss. So that actually, it backfired on Vern, because maybe if Vern didn't give him that pressure, maybe Hogan would have married Vern's daughter. We wouldn't have Hogan knows best, 30 years later. But in any regard, it was such an explosive year. We didn't talk too much about Dusty Rhodes, but Dusty Rhodes was one of these guys, kind of like Andre the Giant, who was accepted as a top main event guy anywhere he went in 1983. I think he even came into Madison Square Garden for a 6-man tag in 83. And Dusty would show up in Mid-South and get himself involved with helping Junkyard Dog in a tag match, or Dusty would show up, and his home base seemed to be Florida, but he was welcome just about everywhere. And he would bring him and his splotch and his cowboy boots and the whole Dusty Rhodes 9 yards. And just like I said, an exciting time for wrestling. The last Battle of Atlanta, I don't think we talked about that yet.
We saw the clip of the feud.
The Buzz Sawyer Tommy Rich feud that you did show a clip of, that was running way hot, and that was going on 2 years, and they finally said, we got to end this feud. So they actually did a really smart thing, which is they had a match between Tommy Rich and Buzz Sawyer in not just a cage, but like a supersized cage, basically very much like the Hell in a Cell 20 years later. And they called this thing the Last Battle of Atlanta. And I believe Paul Ellering was like in a little mini cage up top of it. And then Ole Anderson and Paul Ellering had like a bonus match after the match. It was just crazy. And once again, Sports Review Wrestling had a picture on the cover of, the cover of Sports Review Wrestling comes in. I'm sitting there. My sister's there. My cousin Christine is visiting us. She never visited us. And I open up the manila envelope from TV Sports in Rockefeller Center, New York is where it always came from. Rip open the manila envelope and pull out the Sports Review Wrestling. And Buzz Sawyer is holding Tommy Rich's face, about to smash him into the mat. And Tommy's bleeding profusely. He's got the blood soaking into his white trunks, and Sawyer's got those blue trunks, and they're soaked with blood. And it's just, I think that's part of the word mystique that I think today's wrestling fan doesn't get. And when I say get, means they're not receiving it, because there is no mystique. Because Cody Rhodes will go on his podcast and talk about how wonderful it is to work with John Cena, and Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega will have a great match in Japan. And the next day they're recording a podcast, putting each other over. But back then, with kayfabe still alive, you would not have that. And the mystique of, yes, a wrestling fan knows the deal. They know that it's predetermined, but it was just so much easier to buy into it because the magic what if, these guys protected what they were doing. So yes, we knew that it was predetermined. We get that. But when you're sitting there and you're watching Buzz Sawyer and Tommy Rich beat the snot out of each other for 40 minutes in a cell, or you're watching this new tag team, the Road Warriors, come into Georgia Championship Wrestling, or Ronnie Garvin and Jake the Snake Roberts beat the crap out of each other for the TV title, or the Von Erichs and the Freebirds for that matter, it was just so much easier to buy into it. and I do think the magazines, although I would hear later on, oh yeah, Bill Apter and Craig Peters, they just wrote up all this stuff. They weren't really interviewing the wrestlers. It was all off the top of their heads. But those guys were great writers. I mean, if those guys were just
Very
making
good
stuff up, good for them, because I bought into it, you know. So I mean, it was people sometimes, I think the old fans will crap on the modern wrestling, and I've been known to do that too, but I think as long as it's easy enough to put together a ring and two people willing to fight and a referee willing to count to three, it's so easy to put together a wrestling show. The quality is debatable, sure, but I think wrestling will continue. But the way that we experienced it, guys, that is lost. That's lost. And it was a special time.
Indeed. Mike the Class DiGregorio, your thoughts and about those last bunch of clips. And of course, 1983, you grew up in my area here, Western New York, Niagara Falls. We're 20 minutes from Buffalo and 10 minutes over the border, Canada. Mike Messier, and we talked about, like Mike the Class mentioned, Maple Leaf Wrestling, right over the border, Niagara Falls, Ontario. But of course, the big cards were Toronto's Maple Leaf Gardens. That was an hour and a half away from us. Just talent galore until 84, and that changed to the WWF. But Mike DeClass here, we had WWF, like Benny mentioned, Saturday night at midnight on WOR. We had a little bit of Florida, if we're lucky, some AWA, and of course Mid-Atlantic every Saturday afternoon, 3 o'clock on Buffalo, out of Buffalo. But yeah, I mean, that's why mainly I am a classic wrestling fan, because like Mike Messier said, it's gone, and it's up to us, the WFIA, and anybody else, Billy Corgan, to keep this alive, keep it coming, and teach the young people out there that this was and still is a great time period.
Yeah, I have to agree with Mike Messier about the mystique is gone. We know that kayfabe actually died with the whole curtain call. That's when it started, you know. And I know Triple H caught a lot of heat for that. And ironically, now he's pretty much executive producer and the head guy with WWE, which is kind of ironic when you really think about it. But you know how we were talking about Hulk Hogan possibly marrying Bert Gagne's daughter? You think Triple H married into the family there, and now he's thriving in that role where McMahon is out. And I don't think, you got to separate the character of Vince McMahon from the actual person. I mean, the man was ahead of his time, and he had business savvy. Granted, yes, it was a little bit greedy. And it's good to see. I have to say, I'd like the idea of having more wrestling rather than having less. As in you got AEW, which lately has been getting a little bit better. I mean, honestly, but again, you're never going to see those type of matches. You're never going to see the Abdullah the Butchers. The only guy that comes close to that is Johnny Moxley. As far as those crazy matches in the bleeding. But you gotta want to root for AWA too. I'm sorry, for AEW, because they're kind of like where WCW is right now when WCW was losing to them, and you got to have 2 or 3 good wrestling promotions. You know what I mean? And that's why I kind of hope I'm really doing. I have a lot of hope for that Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling. Granted, it just started, but they've had some decent wrestling up there. You know what I mean? And it doesn't hurt. It really doesn't. Like I said, as far as some of these classic matches that you showed today, the ones that really stood out to me were the the actual Hogan Backlund match, and then of course the one that showed Don Morocco versus Jimmy Snuka.
The start of that feud.
Yeah, I liked Don Morocco as a heel. I mean, like I said, he was around for a while, and I don't think that man gets enough credit either. You know, I mean, he won some championships. I mean, he did win the WWF championship, and I believe, didn't he win the Intercontinental too?
Well, he was never a WWF champion, but he was
He
the
was
IC.
never
Morocco was never the heavyweight, but he was the IC.
Yeah, he was the IC.
Oh, he was the IC. Okay, I thought for some reason he had in the 70s he was, but I guess not. I could be mistaken.
He was
But
a
again,
Florida champion in 1980.
oh, okay. But like again, seeing some of these wrestlers that we haven't seen in a while, you know, I mean, what's it going to be like 20 years now? 20 years from now, when we're looking at Hogan, I mean, it's kind of like, you know, and you know, it's, to me, honestly, this kind of like was a shocker to me today, and knowing the kind of help that Ric Flair's and, you know, I mean, these are the legends. These are guys that I think are like top 5, top 10. You know what I mean? You talk about Bruno from the 60s. We talk about, you know, the 70s being, who is it? 70s was, Harley Race. You know, I mean, these are guys that built the business.
Yeah.
So it's like any kind of wrestling fan and historian is going to say, you know, to a lot of these young kids that are just watching it and just finding out about it now. I mean, it's nuts. And when you even see the ratings for television now, it's a lot lower than it used to be. Like, there's not as many eyeballs on TV. I was looking at, like, something about the ratings in I think it was 86 when the Cosby Show was on. And they're talking about 30-something million viewers for the #1 show. They don't draw like that anymore.
No,
you know what I mean?
Not even close.
Not even close, and it's crazy that it's gone that way. But I think the streaming is having a lot to do with it too. Right. But again, those were some great matches that you showed, and that was definitely a banner year for wrestling.
Well, what we didn't mention, Mike Messier, was, of course, you mentioned the WC World Wrestling Council out of Puerto Rico, Carlos Colon. Always the champion, Abdullah, and different people throughout there. They had a TV show too that you can check out on YouTube. I don't know, you know, it's pretty good, although it's commentary, but still pretty good and historical. I mean, Ox Baker was, I mean, a who's who was down there and on that TV show. But of course, we had All Japan.
Yeah,
and
even
Japan. And AAA, Mexico.
If, for the people in Japan, right. So and people in Japan had their choice of wrestling, and I believe Baba wasn't Giant Baba with All Japan and Inoki with New Japan, and that was kind of their WCW versus WWE or WWF. Like, that was their version of that, and. Yeah, as far as I can't remember, I don't remember if AAA around in '83. I know CMML was, right. I mean, you had guys like another guy, right? Tiger Mask from Japan, the original Tiger Mask. I mean, he was coming over. He was making a big name for himself, and that's a guy. Tiger Mask and Dynamite Kid and Bret Hart, a very young Bret Hart, but those junior heavyweights were making they were doing things that you could say were 10 or 15 years ahead of their time, maybe 20 years ahead of their time, and other wrestlers would eventually catch up and open the flood that like smaller guys could be main event guys, like Tiger Mask and Dynamite Kid were doing that. And I think one thing that probably wasn't very prevalent in 1983 that is now is women's wrestling. I mean, I think that it's fair to say that with the exception of you know, Velvet McIntyre and there was, I guess, Penny Banner and Donna Cristanello and of course Moolah, but there weren't a whole lot of women wrestlers out there. And even a couple of ladies that I became a big fan of, Sherry Martel and Medusa Michelli, they weren't around in '83 as far as I know. Maybe Sherry was, but she was just getting started. But women's wrestling, not so much. It wasn't doing so well at the time. I think Moolah had strangleholded women's wrestling into the ground, and it would take a few years for it to start having a pulse. But stuff you showed. I was a WWF fan. Some of the live shows I went to, I did get to see a Snuka Morocco match in person. They had a kind of a cheapo disqualification finish on that same card. I think this was October or September of '83 at the Capitol Center in Landover. Don Kernoodle was actually in the WWF for a short period. People don't really know or remember when Snuka was either attacked by Crippler Stevens or by Morocco. Snuka was actually about to wrestle Don Kernoodle, which I think people forget about. But, it was interesting that some of those Carolina wrestlers would kind of peek in for a little while and then go about their merry way. And also, like I said, I mentioned briefly, but the Road Warriors, I think their first calendar year was '83. They got such an immediate push in Georgia Championship Wrestling. That was very exciting. There was another push. There was a push in the mid '80s, which I think the Road Warriors don't get a lot of credit for this, but the Muscle Man wrestler. I think the Road Warriors were probably the tipping point, because if you look at Lex Luger and, to a lesser extent, Sting, I mean, you did have Tony Atlas around too, but I think the muscle guys that kind of became the thing, the Nord the Barbarians and guys like that, the Powers of Pain, the Warlord, I think that they were really kind of inspired by the Legion of Doom, Hawk and Animal. And they even had a group there. The Legion of Doom actually had the Spoiler and Jake the Snake Roberts and the Road Warriors. The Legion of Doom was not just Hawk and Animal. It was actually those four guys with Paul Ellering. Mm-hmm. There was just a ton of stuff in 1983. I think, as far as, I could be wrong, guys, but did the Grand Wizard of Wrestling, the manager, did he pass away in late '83 or did he pass away in early '84?
I believe '83.
Yeah, it was shortly after shortly after the Superstar came in, so that would be like probably end of September, early October, building for that match with Backlund in October of '83 in Madison Square Garden. I remember, you're right, Vince McMahon Jr. brought up a picture of him on the screen and said the untimely death of the Grand Wizard of Wrestling. Yeah. Ernie Roth, who was...
So that was my... Right. Ernie Roth, didn't he have another name like Abzul or something? Farouk. He had a different name that was hard Abdullah to pronounce. In right. Detroit. So, I mean, the Grand Wizard, Abdullah Farouk, Ernie Roth. Yeah, that was... Yeah. I could be mistaken, but I think that was the first wrestling death that I experienced. Like that was as a very little kid. That was the first time that a wrestling personality passed away in my time as a fan. And then David Von Erich wasn't too much later, but it's just interesting because I do have some memories that those were the big three: Grand Wizard, Captain Lou Albano, and Fred Blassie were like these mafia bosses that were running roughshod in the Northeast. And there's a famous photograph of a young Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman got himself at the age of 14 a photography job at Madison Square Garden for WWF. And there's a famous photo of 14-year-old Heyman with Wizard, Albano, and Blassie. And I mean, that's, like I said, guys, it was just a different time. I think Jim Cornette, I could be wrong, but was Jim Cornette, did he start going as a manager in '83?
I believe he started in Memphis, yes, and then moved on to Mid-South. Yes.
I think his first television protege was Sherry Martel. I think Cornette, the first time he was on television as a manager, he was managing Sherry Martel. So, I mean, just... a lot of people were starting. Here's the thing I don't know about '83, and I don't know if Benny might fill us in, but was there any wrestlers who kind of called it a wrap in '83? Like, was maybe Johnny Weaver or somebody like that? But was there any top wrestlers who kind of phased out or retired in 1983? I'm trying to think of that.
Not to my knowledge. I don't know.
I couldn't tell you offhand.
Yeah, but. Wow. Indeed. Well, another quick thing. We didn't mention, of course, which you're right. You don't see many managers anymore. The Masked Men you don't see anymore. The Russian tag team, the Japan tag team. But of course, back in '83, they were even phasing away after WrestleMania 3 in '87 is when they really phased away the midgets. and the midgets were in WWF, of course. They were AWA Wrestle Rock. I mean, they were around the territories too. You know, Lord Littlebrook, Little Tokyo, you know, Cowboy Lang, Skylo Low. I mean, they were all over too. So you know, a lot of people don't even know about that history.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. Midget wrestling, I mean, that's what the midgets call it, but there's a bar circuit where there's different wrestling groups consisting of little people or midgets, whatever you want to call it, but they basically have their own promotions now where they tour the bars, and the hipsters, the neckbeards, come out to see the midgets have a whole show for themselves. So good for them for putting themselves into business, because the last time we were really gifted of a pro wrestling little person or midget on national television was Hornswoggle. And he was wrestling there in WWE as a character, but he also had a few matches at least. So, it's interesting, guys, how in the course of my lifetime, in the course of everybody's lifetime, things do change. And like I said earlier, 1983 feels like that's the year the old territory system peaked. And then after that, it started to get downhill, and I would use the term cherry picking. Vince McMahon cherry picking the Paul Orndorffs, the Roddy Pipers, the Junkyard Dogs, the Hulk Hogans even. He was taking some of the top talent from each promotion, and by the time we get to 86 or 87, a lot of these promotions just didn't have the numbers for the fans because their top guys had gone to WWF.
Right. Well, guys, at this time, Benny, if you will, please put up my ECMC still pick, please. As we mention each and every week on this show, and we're going to mention it until she gets help, our good friend, Mrs. Robin Restino here, Western New York, Niagara Falls, ECMC transplant is 716-898-5001 is the number to call. She's in desperate need of a kidney. Blood types are matching A negative, A plus, and O. And if anybody out there across this country can please help out our friend here in Western New York for giving her a kidney so she can live on a rest of her happy life, that would be awesome. And of course, we will mention that each and every week on this show until that does happen for her. And if you will, Benny, Mike DeClass, our independent wrestler of the week, please.
Absolutely. This week's indie wrestler of the week is Charlie Evans, and she is the PWA champion out of Australia. It's a great pick. It's interesting because quite a few of these female wrestlers are coming out of Australia. You've got somebody like Rhea Ripley, and it's starting to become a little bit of a hotbed, I guess, for wrestling.
That's a pretty cool belt, too, I have to say.
Yeah. So that's, like I said, she's an Australian female wrestler, and again, you know, it's the women are the last few years they've definitely, you know, improved by leaps and bounds the last 10 years.
For sure.
Especially
And
the quality of it.
Why don't you guys, Benny and Mike, DeClass, carry on with our salute to service, military of the week.
Absolutely. In this week's military salute to service, he was a Marine Corpsman, Jackson Riker, and he was a wrestler that performed in TNA and in and in WWE. He was released a few years ago, unfortunately, but he also went by the name of Gunner in TNA.
Right, because the name Jackson Riker didn't ring a bell with me, but when you said Gunner, I knew he was in TNA back in the day. So
yeah, you know how WWE likes to change the names, so you know that was his name. There was Jackson Riker, but his real name is Chad Lale. But again, you know, it's unfortunate. I mean, I don't know if he requested his release, but that was around that time frame where COVID hit, and after that, quite a few wrestlers got released. And like we were talking about earlier, where Benny was talking about, you know, how many job openings that they had between all these territories, and it's now it's. I mean, you look at Braun Strowman, a guy like that should be still wrestling, and he's out there, free agent, and not signed. So who knows?
Yeah. Wow. Well, Benny, would you please transition to my weekly PSA of the week for this week? This week, unfortunately, we know the passing of rock legend, entertainer Ozzy Osbourne came to mind. The Michael J. Fox Foundation. You can check out michaeljfox.org, O-R-G, and it is, of course, for Parkinson's research. As we know, over the years, Michael J. Fox started having it, and he's still with us and has done a lot of hard work for this cause out there. And again, Ozzy Osbourne had it. Neil Diamond had it. A lot of people, family members, friends, of course, have it locally. And so please check out michaeljfox.org, and it is the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research. And before we go this week, guys, definitely appreciate your time. Please like and subscribe to the Playa Entertainment Network on YouTube, and of course the WFIA.org. And we want to thank our friend Mr. Mike Messier for joining us this week and reliving 1983.
All right, Triple M.
Yeah, it was great to be here. Thanks, Mike. It was great to be here, Chris and Benny. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mike.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care. Have a good day.
Of course, thank you to Benny for your hard work producing this show. We greatly appreciate it, putting us out there. And guys, next week, Thursday, July 31st, 7 p.m. Eastern, right here back on the Player Entertainment Network, will be this show's Classic Pro Wrestling with the WFIA podcast tribute to the great, the immortal, the icon. We can go on and on. Hulk Hogan, a.k.a. Mr. Terry Bollea. So join us for that next week, and we got some interesting guests for the week to come, and I greatly appreciate it. Benny, take us out of here. We'll see you next week.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, everyone.